My husband brought his mistress to our family barbecue. While I served food I'd spent hours making. She laughed at everything about me. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "What will you do, divorce me?" I smiled, because I already had a plan. Before I tell you how I made them both regret everything, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my situation. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Monica had always been the kind of woman who held things together. For 8 years, she'd been married to Gerald, a financial consultant who wore expensive suits and drove a car that cost more than most people's yearly salary. They lived in a nice suburban home with a perfectly manicured lawn, the kind of place where neighbors waved at each other and everyone knew everyone's business. On paper, Monica's life looked perfect. She'd given up her marketing career when Gerald's business started taking off, and she'd thrown herself into supporting him completely. She managed the house, remembered birthday gifts for his clients, dealt with his demanding mother, and made sure their social image stayed spotless. But perfection is usually just a mask for something broken underneath. It started small, the way these things always do. Gerald began coming home later and later, always with a reasonable excuse: a client dinner, paperwork that couldn't wait, traffic that seemed to only exist on the nights he was supposed to be home early. Then Monica noticed charges on their credit card that didn't make sense. Expensive restaurants she'd never been to. Flowers she'd never received. There was perfume on his collar sometimes, a sweet, cheap scent that made her stomach turn. His phone was always face down on the table, and he'd started taking calls in another room. Monica saw all of it. She felt the distance growing between them like a cold wind, but she stayed quiet. She kept playing the perfect wife, kept smiling at dinner parties, kept pretending she didn't notice the way he looked right through her. Part of her didn't want to know the truth. Part of her was scared of what would happen if she confronted him. So she waited, watched, and said nothing. Then came the summer barbecue. Every year Monica hosted a big barbecue at their house. It was tradition. Gerald's family came, their friends, neighbors, everyone. Monica was famous in their circle for her cooking. She'd spend days preparing, making her grandmother's special ribs, her potato salad that everyone raved about, homemade pies that disappeared within minutes. This year was no different. She'd spent 2 full days in the kitchen, decorating the backyard with lights and flowers, making sure everything was perfect. The guests started arriving around noon. Gerald's mother came first, already criticizing the placement of the chairs. His brother showed up with his kids, who immediately ran wild through the yard. Friends trickled in, neighbors brought wine, and soon the backyard was full of laughter and conversation. Monica moved through it all like a conductor, making sure everyone had drinks, that the food kept coming, that no one felt left out. She was good at this. She'd been doing it for years. Then Gerald showed up late to his own party, and he wasn't alone. The woman with him was younger than Monica, maybe late 20s, with long dark hair and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. She wore tight jeans and a low-cut top that was completely wrong for a family barbecue. Gerald had his hand on her lower back as he guided her through the gate into the backyard. Monica felt her heart drop into her stomach, but she kept her smile fixed on her face. Gerald walked right up to her with the woman in tow. "Monica, this is Vanessa. She's my new business associate. Just moved to town, doesn't know anyone yet, so I told her she should come meet people." He said it so casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world to bring your mistress to a family event. Monica's gut knew immediately. She could see it in the way Vanessa looked at Gerald, the familiarity in how she touched his arm. She could see it in the slight smirk on Vanessa's face as she extended her hand for a handshake. But there were 40 people in their backyard. Gerald's mother was watching. Their neighbors were there, so Monica shook Vanessa's hand and said, "Welcome. There's plenty of food. Make yourself at home." The afternoon became a special kind of torture. Vanessa made comments constantly, little digs wrapped in fake sweetness. When she tried Monica's famous potato salad, she said, "Oh, you made potato salad? How traditional. When someone complimented the decorations, Vanessa added, yes, very suburban chic. She kept asking Monica questions designed to make her look small. So you don't work? That must be nice. Just cooking and decorating all day. She touched Gerald constantly, her hand on his shoulder, her fingers brushing his arm, laughing too loud at everything he said. And Gerald, he ate it up. He laughed at Vanessa's jokes. He ignored Monica when she tried to catch his eye. When his cousin asked how they met, Gerald launched into this long story about how Vanessa was so smart, so innovative, bringing fresh ideas to his business. Monica stood there holding a tray of drinks, invisible. The other guests started getting uncomfortable. Monica could see it in their faces. Gerald's cousin kept shooting Monica sympathetic looks. Their neighbor, an older woman who'd always been kind to Monica, actually pulled her aside and asked if she was okay. Monica just smiled and said she was fine, then went back to the kitchen to refill the lemonade. That's when Vanessa followed her inside. Monica was at the sink, her hands shaking as she poured lemonade into a pitcher. She heard the clicking of heels on the kitchen tile and knew without turning around who it was. Vanessa leaned against the counter, looking around the kitchen with an expression that was almost pitying. Your house is cute, she said. Small but cute. Very homey. Monica didn't respond. She kept pouring lemonade, focused on keeping her hands steady. Then Gerald walked in, probably looking for another beer. The energy in the room shifted immediately. Monica set down the pitcher and turned to face him. Gerald, can we talk? In private. He barely looked at her. We have guests, Monica. Whatever it is can wait. No, Monica said quietly. It can't. Gerald's jaw tightened. He hated being challenged, especially in front of other people. You're being dramatic. Stop being so insecure. Something inside Monica snapped. Her voice came out low, but firm. I know what's going on. Gerald actually laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound that Monica had never heard from him before. He stepped closer to her, and Vanessa watched from the doorway with that same smirk on her face. What will you do? Divorce me, Gerald said, loud enough that his voice carried. You have nothing, Monica. No job, no money of your own. You haven't worked in 8 years. Where will you go? Back to your mama's house. You need me. So stop embarrassing yourself. Monica heard footsteps in the hallway. Gerald's cousin was there, had heard everything. Through the kitchen window, she could see some of the guests had gone quiet, were looking toward the house. Her humiliation was complete. Gerald had made sure of it. He wanted her to know her place, wanted her to understand that she was powerless. Monica looked at Gerald, then at Vanessa, then back at Gerald. She took a deep breath. And then she smiled. You're right, she said calmly. Where would I go? Let me get back to hosting your guests. She picked up the lemonade pitcher and walked past both of them, her head high, her smile never wavering. She went back outside and continued playing hostess like nothing had happened. She served food, refilled drinks, laughed at jokes, and made sure everyone was comfortable. She was perfect. When the party finally ended and the last guest left, Gerald and Vanessa left together. He didn't even bother making up an excuse anymore. Business meeting, he said, and they were gone. Monica stood in her destroyed backyard, surrounded by empty plates and crumpled napkins. And she didn't cry. She went inside, cleaned up the kitchen, and then she opened her laptop. Monica had always been good with details. That's why Gerald's business had run so smoothly all these years. She'd filed every paper, organized every document, managed every administrative task while he played golf with clients. She knew where everything was, so when she started looking through their finances, through the business accounts, through Gerald's email that she still had the password to, she found everything. He'd been moving money to separate accounts for months. He had a secret credit card she didn't know about. The charges told a story: hotels, jewelry, expensive dinners, and a car. Gerald had bought Vanessa a car with money from the business account. He was planning to divorce Monica and leave her with nothing. He'd been setting it up for months, moving assets, hiding money, making sure she'd have no claim to anything. But Gerald had forgotten something important. When he'd started his consulting business 8 years ago, Monica had been there. She'd helped him file the paperwork, she'd co-signed the loans, and her name was still on the LLC documents as a 50% owner. He'd been so focused on making her feel small that he'd forgotten she legally owned half of everything he'd built. Monica took screenshots of everything: the hidden accounts, the inappropriate business expenses, the emails between Gerald and Vanessa that were definitely not professional, the car title with Vanessa's name on it, purchased with business funds. She documented it all methodically, the way she'd learned to do when she worked in marketing, before Gerald convinced her to give it up. Then she called Denise, a friend from college who'd become a divorce attorney. They met for coffee the next morning. Monica brought her laptop, showed Denise everything. Denise looked through the documents, her eyes getting wider with each page. When she finally looked up, she was grinning. "Girl," Denise said, "he messed with the wrong one." For the next 3 weeks, Monica played her part perfectly. She cooked Gerald's favorite meals. She smiled when he came home late. She didn't ask questions when Vanessa started showing up at the house, sitting in Monica's living room like she owned it. Gerald and Vanessa thought they'd broken her. They thought she'd accepted her fate. They got comfortable, careless. They stopped hiding. But Monica was busy. She changed all the passwords to the business accounts, using security protocols that locked Gerald out temporarily. She contacted Gerald's biggest clients, the ones she'd been schmoozing for years, at dinner parties, sent them professional emails about upcoming changes in business structure. She documented every single expense Gerald charged to the business for personal use with Vanessa. And she reached out to Gerald's cousin, the one who'd overheard the kitchen confrontation, and asked if she'd be willing to testify about what she'd seen and heard. 3 weeks after the barbecue, Monica got dressed in her best suit, the one she'd worn to job interviews back when she still had a career. She drove to Gerald's office in the middle of the workday. Denise met her there, along with a process server. They walked into the building together, took the elevator to the 3rd floor, and walked right into Gerald's office, where he was in a meeting with his business partners. Gerald looked up, annoyed at the interruption. Then he saw Monica's face, saw the lawyer beside her, and the color drained from his cheeks. "Monica, what are you doing here?" The process server handed him the envelope. "Gerald Thompson, you've been served." His business partners looked confused. Gerald opened the envelope with shaking hands, started reading. Monica watched his face go from pale to red. "You can't do this," he said, his voice rising. "You can't just take half my business." Denise stepped forward. "Actually, Mr. Thompson, she can. Mrs. Thompson is listed as a 50% owner of your LLC. She has every legal right to her share. We're also seeking damages for the business funds you misappropriated for personal use, including but not limited to the vehicle you purchased for Ms. Vanessa Martinez using company money." One of Gerald's business partners stood up. "You did what?" "We had no idea about any of this," the other partner said, looking at Gerald with disgust. "You've been stealing from the company?" Gerald tried to talk, to explain, but his voice came out as a stammer. That's when Vanessa appeared in the doorway. She must have been in another office, heard the commotion. She walked in like she belonged there, started to say something to Gerald, then stopped when she saw everyone staring at her. Denise smiled at her. "Ms. Martinez, I presume. You might want to know that the vehicle registered in your name is being claimed as a company asset that was improperly transferred. We'll be seeking its return or equivalent value in the settlement." Monica watched Vanessa's face carefully. She saw the exact moment the other woman did the math, realized that Gerald wasn't a rich man about to leave his wife. He was a man about to lose everything. Vanessa's expression changed from confidence to calculation in a heartbeat. "I just remembered," Vanessa said, backing toward the door. "I have somewhere I need to be." "Vanessa, wait." Gerald called out, but she was already gone. They heard her heels clicking rapidly down the hallway, heard the elevator ding, and then nothing. She'd walked out of Gerald's life as easily as she'd walked into it. Now that there was nothing in it for her, Gerald stood there in his expensive suit, in his nice office, surrounded by his angry business partners and his wife's lawyer. And he looked smaller than Monica had ever seen him. "Monica," he said, his voice cracking. "Baby, please, we can work this out. I made a mistake. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever you want." Monica looked at the man she'd spent 8 years supporting, the man who'd made her feel worthless just 3 weeks ago. "You asked me what I would do," she said quietly. "You're looking at it." She turned to his business partners. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. My lawyer will be in touch about the business assets. I expect you'll want to have your own attorneys review the company finances. I think you'll find some irregularities beyond what we've already discussed." Then she looked at Gerald one more time. "Oh, and your family. I already told them everything. Your mother called you a disgrace. Your cousin is willing to testify about what she heard at the barbecue. Just thought you should know." Monica walked out of that office with her head high, Denise beside her. Behind them, they heard Gerald's business partners start demanding answers, their voices rising in anger. The elevator doors closed, cutting off the sound, and Monica finally let herself breathe. 6 months later, the settlement was finalized. Monica got her 50% share of the business, cashed out for a substantial amount. She got compensation for all the misused funds. The house had to be sold, but Monica got her share of that too. She used the money to start her own marketing consulting firm, and it was thriving. All those relationships she'd built over the years, all those clients she'd charmed at dinner parties while Gerald took credit, they remembered her. They liked working with her. She was good at what she did, and she'd forgotten that about herself. She moved into a beautiful apartment downtown, the kind of place she'd always wanted, but Gerald had said was too impractical. She decorated it exactly how she liked, with bold colors and artwork that made her happy. She started going to the gym, not to look good for anyone else, but because it made her feel strong. She reconnected with old friends she'd lost touch with when Gerald made her feel like she shouldn't have her own social life. Gerald's business barely survived. His partners bought out his share at a reduced rate after everything that came to light. He was living in a small apartment, driving a used car, and dealing with the fact that everyone in their social circle knew exactly what he'd done. He'd tried to reach out to Monica a few times, sending texts that started with, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," but she blocked him everywhere without reading past the first line. As for Vanessa, Monica heard through the grapevine that she'd married someone else within 4 months, some other man with money and a fragile ego. Monica almost felt sorry for him. Almost. One evening, Monica sat on her apartment balcony, drinking wine and watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold and pink. She thought about that day at the barbecue, about Gerald asking her what she would do, about how powerless he'd tried to make her feel. She thought about how close she'd come to believing him, to thinking she really did have nothing without him. The truth was simpler and more powerful than Gerald had ever understood. He'd thought she had nothing without him, but it turned out he'd had nothing without her. All those years, she'd been the one holding everything together, managing the details, building the relationships, keeping his life running smoothly. She'd just forgotten her own value because he'd spent so long making her doubt it. Monica raised her wine glass to the sunset, to herself, to every woman who'd ever been made to feel small by someone who should have lifted her up. Never let anyone make you believe you're powerless, she thought, and never, ever underestimate a woman who stays quiet while she plans. So that's what happened when he asked what I'd do. I did exactly what he didn't think I could. If this story taught you anything, smash that like button. Drop a comment telling me if you think I went too far or not far enough. And subscribe, because I've got more stories where people learned not to underestimate me. See you in the next one.